That's pretty sad considering how much I know that getting back to RFK means to so many of you who are diehard fans of this team who deserve so much better. I want to talk about the thing we just talked about with Sam Fortier, the RFK Stadium bill, which is something that I have been talking about basically since I moved here, which was over 10 years ago. I jokingly referenced yesterday when we were talking to Eric Flack that Michael Phillips and Rick Snyder made a bet on where the next stadium would be in 2014. It's something that Bruce Allen and Dan Snyder had worked on and failed spectacularly for a variety of reasons. They failed spectacularly and unspectacularly at a lot of different things. It's something that Jason Wright has been working on for a number of years now. And it is something that Josh Harris, now that there is, one, he's in place, and two, the lease at formerly FedEx Field, now Northwest Stadium, is coming up in 2028. It's one they can easily extend out a couple years, but they would like to, like, they're kind of free to move if they would like by either 27 or 28, depending on a couple of details that aren't important to the bulk of this discussion. But now that deadline is closing, it's like, all right, well, now we gotta move. This isn't about some future project anymore. This isn't about like, oh, maybe we'll get it done and then we can move early and we can negotiate and we can pay some money here. Whatever. No, we're now in crunch time, and it's very frustrating for a litany of reasons. But I find this even more frustrating the older I get, the more politics that I consume. And I am someone who pays quite a bit of attention to that world. And also as someone who is now not just living in the area and covering this professionally, but as a citizen of the District of Columbia. I live inside the district. And that means if I, unlike any of you listening in Maryland or Virginia, would like to call my senator and express my opinion on something that is going to affect not my specific neighborhood. I don't live by RFK, but it certainly would affect my taxes, my everything. I can't do that. I can't say, hey, actually, I don't want the stadium to go back to RFK because I don't want to pay extra taxes that will help the city pay for it. Or, hey, I'm willing to pay those taxes and deal with any potential extra traffic and or blah, 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 because I don't have anyone to call. And so I've said on this show before, and I will say again now, before getting even into the meat of this particular issue, the one political issue I'm willing to talk about on this sports radio show in the District of Columbia is DC statehood. And if you don't get why it is so important based off of this, then I got nothing for you. And the thing is, the only people that truly oppose DC statehood are Republicans who don't want two more Democratic senators in D.C. Because if we're being adults about it, that's what would happen. The voting bloc in the District of Columbia is one of the highest concentrations of Democrats in the country. So the reality is if you made D.C. a state and gave it the same two senators as everyone else, that would shift the balance of power in the Senate, 2 seats in the Democrats' direction. However, that should not be a valid argument because if you want to convince people that to make it not 2 Democratic senators, because they don't get automatically 2 Democratic senators, they would get 2 senators. And I promise I'm going to flip this back around to the Democrats in a second. So if you are someone who leans right or is a bona fide, diehard in the wool Republican of any variety, like I promise I'm going to come for the Democrats in a second. So I'm just making a point to make a point and show that the point actually applies to both sides. So if you would like DC statehood to not happen because you don't want to see 2 Democratic senators, well, you should be in support of DC statehood because, you know, those of us that live in the district should have representation in Congress and make better arguments, ones that appeal to the people of the District of Columbia. And then people will go, oh, you know what? I actually kind of like those Republican policies. I like that thing that they're doing over there. I'm going to vote for them because that's how democracy is supposed to work. And so instead, what we have now is a fight over land that's in the District of Columbia, in Congress, in the Senate, with 2 Democrats from Maryland who are pulling the same crap. They can't win the argument on the merits, so they're abusing the power they have, and those of us without power, the citizens of the District of Columbia, just get screwed. Because here's the thing for Chris Van Hollen and Ben Cardin, the 2 senators from Maryland. If you had an actual competition to say, hey, Washington Commanders, you come sit down with our representatives, whoever it is that wants to represent the state of Maryland, whether it's the senators, whether it's Governor Wes Moore, whether it's members of the private business community that are based in PG County where the stadium is, and you said, hey, this is what we're willing to give you. This is why we think it's really important. By the way, let's appeal to some of your better nature. The franchise, even though it wasn't you, but you have echoed the idea that you were actually going to follow through on broken promises. The franchise promised to help develop this area in Landover. You have failed spectacularly. If you come to us, we will give you X, Y, and Z. We will help you make this stadium a better experience. You already own the land, so you don't even have to pay money. We're willing to give you some money, and we have the public funding, and you would get to follow through and build goodwill with the community because you'd actually follow through on the promises. And if you know you want to make nice in this area, make right or wrong that Dan Snyder did. Pretty easy to do in this particular case. So let's make a deal. And if that was more appealing than the DC folks who were like, ugh, we can scrounge together some money, but we got the RFK site, and you're going to be on your own for a lot of this because we don't have a lot of public support for a lot of more public money, in part because we gave a lot to Ted Leonsis. Want to do a deal? Win that argument on the merits. Win the argument on the merits. And that is my point in all of this. And this is why people, by the way, hate politics, which is a huge problem. Because most people correctly, in a lot of ways, assume that backroom wheeling and dealing, handshaking, I'll vote for this if you vote for that nonsense is how business gets done. And that's not cool. That's not okay. That's not how any of this is supposed to work. The only reason that we're in this scenario where the Maryland senators can even do this is because Steve Daines, a senator from Montana, 2,500 miles or something like that away from here, delayed this thing so long that it couldn't get a standalone vote. And this is how thousands of things get done every year, because they can't get standalone votes for any variety of reasons. They just get attached to defense bills and spending bills at the end of the year, and they become these big pork barrel omnibus things. And I just think that shouldn't be how we do business. The country should be run on what is actually best. It should be run based off merit. And so I would hope that the Maryland senators, who I think would make this argument on other things that they want to see done when it sounds politically expedient for them, or it feels politically expedient for them, would apply the same principles to something that could be a political win for them if they just abandon their principles and use their power. I do think there are times in life that you have to use power to get things done. Withholding the right to self-rule and a football stadium in the United States Congress is abso-freaking-lutely not one of them. If you want Maryland to get the stadium, that's fine. If Maryland wants to fight for the stadium, that's fine. But fight fair. Quit kicking DC in the nuts. It hurts. I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of talking about this. I honestly hope that if they don't get it done this year, Josh Harris just goes, you want to know what? Fine. If you clowns are going to do this, I'm not dealing with a circus. We're just going to do the best that we can. Because they need to get out of that stadium. They need to move the franchise forward. They can't wait any longer. And instead, a bunch of Congress people are using this as their personal piñata. And there's actually, Sam was on with JP earlier today over on The Fan and had this great answer, this great soundbite that he was basically like, yeah, people on Capitol Hill don't actually even care about this. It's just, it's a way to score points. It's a, hey, if you shake my hand, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. That's pretty sad considering how much I know that getting back to RFK means to so many of you who are diehard fans of this team who deserve so much better.